Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Mirror Dungeon video. Today, while we wait patiently for hard mode to release, we'll be trying to beat the Mirror Dungeon using nothing but skill 1's. Skill 1's are, generally speaking, the weakest skill any identity has, and if they were the only skills an identity had, most would end up being absolutely terrible. Most skill 1's roll at most an 11, which is pretty bad for both damage and clash power, so of course, with such a debilitating restriction in place, that begs the question, which identities have the best skill 1's? One's so good, in fact, that they could almost be considered skill 2's. There are quite a few identities who fit into this category, but of the 6 I chose, 3 of them were for their clash power and 3 for their damage. For the clash power, we have Chief Butler Ryoshu, Sync Mersault, and Diechi Rodion. Each of them are capable of reaching a pretty consistent 14 clash power, which makes them incredibly reliable. As for damage, we have Ring Yi Song, Philip Sinclair, and Diechi Hong Lu. Each of these identities have multi-coin skills that can roll incredibly high, letting them serve as the bulwark of our DPS. There are probably a few identities who have better skill 1's, for example Princess Rhodia, but by nature of being a skill 1 only run, you're forced to use defense skills whenever you don't have skill 1's. This presented me with a choice, and ultimately I decided the only damage we can do is from skill 1's, and banned any identity who had a counter. I also ended up implementing a rule about halfway through the run wherein if I ever had a skill 1, I was forced to use it, so no evade spamming allowed. Anyway, with all of our identities having absolutely no synergy whatsoever, the question of what ego gifts do we start with arises. Initially I thought about going with Burn, but ultimately decided Poise was the best bet as we already have 2 Poise identities and everyone can benefit from Poise to some extent. So we end up choosing Cigarette Holder and Stone Tomb for our starting gifts and head into Faith and Erosion for the first floor. We end up buying Lithograph, Illusory Hunt, Devil's Share, and Decamillennial Stew Pot at the first shop before the boss against the Slithering Inquisitors. These guys are not that difficult of a boss when you have all of your skill slots. The only real challenging thing about them is the fact that we have multiple dead turns where we're doing practically nothing to them. This is only really a problem after we break the arms for the first time, as the constant poison damage can start to stack up after a while. Fortunately, that's the only real threat, and we can end up defeating them without any real trouble. We take the Ornamental Horseshoe for our reward and head into Hell's Chicken for the next floor. Here we find the Sharp Needle and Thread, as well as both pieces of chicken, and buy the Emerald Elytra, Pendant of Nostalgia, and Bloody Gadget before making it to the boss against Papa Bongi. The reduced health pool of the Mirror Dungeon really hits hard in this floor. Pretty much any skill 1 is capable of defeating the head chickens, and while the Papa himself can be fairly scary with his clashes, we can get lucky and end up not having any skill 1's, allowing us to evade his big scary attacks. Being only able to do damage half the time certainly makes fights take longer than usual, but Papa Bongi isn't really that much of a threat outside of Sinclair's sanity management, and we can defeat him pretty easily.
어두운 무지를 열어줬지.
깔끔하게 잘랐습니다. 이제 니콜리나와 술씨가 비슷해지는데요. 즉시 꿈을 꾸러 가.
망설여 나갈 수 없어.
We take the best ego gift for this run, the Rusty Commemorative Coin, as our reward and head into Emotional Indolence for the next floor. Here we find Painkillers and the Carpenter's Nail, while also buying Milarka and Fiery Down before making it to the boss against the Golden Apple. Yeah, you could probably beat this thing with only a single skill slot while also only using skill 1's. It's not difficult in the slightest. How is it a boss on the 3rd floor? I don't know. All you have to do is press gently on the soft spot on its head like it's a newborn baby and it stops moving. Easy fight.
우리가 우세를 점하고 있어.
어두운 무지를 열어줬지. 다리 한쪽이 작살났네. 그럼 이제 내 기장을 피할 방법이 없지. 아까부터 거슬리던 부위를
하루 기다리는 거 못해. 쨍그랑 도의가 조각났어. 계속해도 돼. 보세요, 관리자님. 이번엔 도움이 좀 될까요?
We take Resolution for our reward and head into Time-Killing Time for the next floor. Here we buy Late Bloomer's Tattoo and Nebulizer before making it to the boss against the Time Ripper. This was easily the hardest fight in the entire run, and if I'm being completely honest, probably my single favorite fight I've ever done in the entire history of this game. Up until this point, the whole rule of if you have a skill 1, you must use it wasn't that big of a deal. Mostly it just ended with Sinclair losing a ton of clashes because of his sanity mechanics, but that was generally it. Here though, it's a completely different story. Most of the Time Ripper skills clash significantly higher than our skill 1's, and 9 times out of 10 I would prefer to use a defense skill. Sometimes we get lucky and don't have to clash with him, but more often than not we had to take a couple of risks.
잠시 묻고 있는 것을 두려워. 개체의 상태가 좋지 않아 보여.
전 찍어.
만물이야. 조금씩 나아가고 있네요. 직접 알게 한다.
His first phase is not that bad, and actually generally pretty easy as long as you get to use a couple of evades. But the real challenge starts once he enters his second phase. On top of his clash power being significantly better than ours, he starts with 30 sanity, making clashing for anyone except for Mersault and Ryoshu basically impossible. And even they can end up struggling as their clash power is pretty much tied to their speed, and with him being so fast, their clash power can end up suffering. The fact that we can't clash means we end up losing clashes, giving him much more sanity and take a ton of damage ourselves. It also certainly doesn't help that because of how many solo runs I've done against this guy, I completely forgot about the fact that his Mutilate skill is an AoE attack, and thus First Blood is drawn. This fight is best described as a death by 1,000 cuts, on both sides. And after a few more losses, Rhodia decides to clutch up and finally finish him off.
맞는 거야. 직접 알겠구나. 어떤 상황이 전투운대에 나서 저희 직원들이 개체의 부위를 파괴했어요. 역시 미리 훈련하길 잘했죠? 물레의 힘을 쓴다면 상처면 충분하겠죠. 직접 알겠습니다. 직원 하나가 더 이상 움직이지 않아. 직접 알겠습니다. 잠시 무릎 꿇는 것을 두려워하지 마시게. 직접 알겠습니다.
어트랙션이 끝나면 꼭 출구에서 상품을 받아가셔야 합니다.
We take the silver watch case for our reward and head into piercers and penetrators for the final floor. Here we find Phantom Pain and buy Greycoat before making it to the final boss against the King Trash Crab. This guy is a complete joke of a boss when compared to the Time Ripper. He can still end up beating our clashes sometimes, but with half of our skills being gloom damage, he never really stood a chance.
좋아. 직접 알겠습니다.
같지가 않은데? 아주 작살을 내놨어.
정 찍었네.
대체들의 체력이 많이 깎여나갔어. 괴로워하는 게 느껴지지 않아? 이 기세로 계속 나아가보자.
깨진 기사. 이제야 완성되었나? 개운하게 정리됐어요. 아, 머리까지 너무 개운해진 것 같은데. 뭐 다시 공부하면 되죠.
And that's how I beat Mirror Dungeon 5 normal using only skill 1s. And to the surprise of absolutely no one, Hong Lu has the best skill 1 out of any identity. You know, when I went into this, I thought maybe, just maybe, Sinclair had a chance to have the best skill 1. I even slotted Sinclair in first and Hong Lu last, and he still did over 1,000 damage more. I mean, granted, Sinclair's sanity mechanics made him lose like literally a quarter of all of his clashes, but even if he hit all of those, Hong Lu still probably would have won. Anyway, that's it from me. Like and subscribe for more videos. Goodbye.